The Iron Curtain has had many meanings attached to it, one of which was an imaginary boundary dividing Europe into two separate areas from the end of World War II in 1945 until the end of the Cold War in 1991. The term Iron Curtain dates back to the 19th century, referring to a fireproof curtain that in the theaters that would separate a stage fire from the audience, as many props were flammable. It would also used to describe the antagonism between the Soviet Union and the West. The decline in relations between the leaders began in the Yalta Conference, which took place in Yalta, Crimea in February 4th to 11th, 1945, and continued at the Potsdam Conference, taking place on July 17th through August 2nd, 1945. The leaders met to discuss the future of Germany after the war. Stalin proved to be a difficult man to deal with, as he wanted control and power over the other leaders at both of the conferences, but pretended to offer concise when he had no intention of granting them, like free elections for Poland. This started the mistrust of the leader and decline in relations between the countries. Decisions about dividing up the country of Germany and the city of Berlin went into effect after the Potsdam Conference. Both the country and the city were to be divided into 4 sections, each governed by either the United States, Britain, France, or the Soviets. As the relationship between Russia and the Allies became strained, the cooperation between the countries turned competitive and aggressive, or East versus West, democracy versus communism. The West and East were thought of and treated differently by the occupying forces. The West was helped out by the countries occupying it and was set up as a capitalistic society and thrived. The Soviets viewed the land they acquired as spoils of war and immediately took things out like factory equipment and other items that could have helped the people start a new life, which left the Germans dependent on the communist way of life to survive. By the 1950s, hundreds of thousands of young, trained professionals in the East Germany saw no future and wanted to leave for the West. They packed their bags and walked across the border, where they were put up in warehouses and then flown into West Germany. By 1961, East Germany had lost 2.1 million people to the West, and the Soviets realized that the easy access from the West was a problem. So, they decided to build a wall to keep people in, and this is how they did it. In the cover of darkness, at midnight between August 12th and 13th, 1961, soldiers and construction workers went around East Berlin digging holes for concrete posts and stringing up barbed wire fences. Telephone wires were also cut. Radio ties were to be cut off well later. The wall was up for 28 years and was reinforced 4 times during that time as relations between the Soviets and the West deteriorated. First was a barbed wire concrete post fence, then 2 days later a concrete block with barbed wire top, followed by a steel reinforced concrete wall in 1975. And the final wall in the 80s that had a 300-foot inner wall surrounding it, which was called No Man's Land, where increasing force was used to keep people in the East. Soldiers patrolled with dogs. There was a raked up ground that showed footprints in case anyone tried to walk across it. Electrified fence were installed with stadium quality lights, anti-vehicle trenches, watchtowers, bunkers, and minefields. There were only a few entrances to East Berlin, and you had to have special permission to do so, which was only granted to a few Allied people and Westerners. The most famous entrance was called Checkpoint Charlie, and it became an icon of the Cold War in movies and around the world of keeping the West away from the East. Peter Fetcher was one young man whose death at the hands of the East German Guards on August 17, 1962, signaled to the world the inhumanity of the Guards and eroded the world vision of communism. Peter had tried to climb over the wall, where 35 shots fired that night by border guns, 1 hit Peter. He fell back into East Germany, where he was left to bleed out by the Guards, even though the Guards from the West were throwing bandages and medical supplies to save him. The West Guards did not want to start a military incident with the Soviets, so did not try to cross into the East to save Peter. He was taken out under artificial fog by the East German Guards and pronounced dead at one of the hospitals near East Germany. All of this has been recorded by Western photographer and was sent out into the world. On November 9th, 1989, a mistake by the government official accidentally opened the borders. Gunter Schwagerbeist, in a speech, said permanent relocations can be done through all border checkpoints between the GDR, East Germany, into the FRG, West Germany, or West Berlin. People in East Germany were shocked and could not believe what he said was true. So they were nervous and tentative trying to cross the border, but when they realized they would not be stopped, huge crowds formed on both sides of the wall, and people brought out chisels and hammers to start taking it down. Berlin was reunified on October 3rd, 1990, and signaled the end of the Cold War.